My father showed up to my first baseball game when I was 5.5 years old, Spring Valley, New York, Memorial Park. We had moved up there. I was mad, crazy mad, upset that we had left the Bronx. But my father brought me to this park one day and he said, "This is where you're going to play. This is the real world." And he shows up to my first game. And my very first at bat, I was playing catcher, by the way. So picture this 5.5-year-old kid with all this gear on. It probably looked pretty funny. But anyway, my first at bat, I hit a kind of a rocket down the first base line, opposite field. Gets past the first baseman, and I start running. And one thing I could do when I was a kid, and still today, I could run. So this 5.5-year-old is running like he's 13. And my father's like, "Run, run, run." He's screaming. I get all the way around the bases, home run. Father's so proud. The son that he adopted, he showed up. Now, previous to this moment, I actually played in a football game that my father had shown up to, except he showed up with his camera. And I ran just as fast as I ran for that home run. I ran to my father and I said, "Do not take a picture of me." He was like, "Why?" I said, "I don't want one of those fathers that like show up with a camera around their neck and like just watch. Like, don't embarrass me." And so when I think about that, that must have really hurt. But my father never brought a camera to another game all the way through high school. And he couldn't see me play football in college because I was all the way in Colorado, which is pretty far from New York. So there are no pictures of me as a child playing ball, baseball, football, basketball, track, nothing. Because my father respected my wishes. My father and I were at odds a lot. Like, I was the kind of kid that couldn't keep my mouth shut. You know, like if something bothered me, I told you. If I felt there was injustice, you know, I was very sensitive to racism as a little kid. I don't know why, but it just came with me. And me and my father, we fought a lot. But he always let me talk. He never shut me down. He never stopped me from talking. So it was a tumultuous relationship, to say the least. My father used to sit out in this back room in the house that we had, and he used to sit on his couch and watch TV and watch, you know, baseball games, football games, whatever, golf. And so I would always come home late to my house as I got older because I was at practice, football practice, basketball practice, whatever. I rarely ate dinner with my family. So anyway, every time I come home, I had to walk through this, you know, past this back room to get to my bedroom. I didn't have to go into it, but I had to walk past it. And every time my father would hear me come in, he'd be sitting out there and he would always extend his arm back like he wanted me to give him a high five or touch his hand or something like that. And never once did I touch his hand. I ignored him every single time. My father. And he never said a word about it. But he never stopped reaching. My father, who I had this crazy relationship with, was really upset when I came to his office one day. We were trying to heal our relationship, and we started to eat lunch together and have dinners occasionally. I was living uptown at the time on 86th Street and Columbus Avenue. My father's office was on 34th Street. He was in the garment district. He was a garment worker, real New York guy, somebody who knew all the out-of-the-way restaurants and all the out-of-the-way places and stuff like that. One day I came to his office. I had come back to New York from Colorado and then a short time in the University of Maryland. And I never graduated from school. I just Played football until my eligibility ran out and I didn't graduate. I was a very poor student. So when I came back to New York, I started to go to school at Fordham University, I guess to get my degree. But the problem was that I was interested in nothing, literally nothing. I was a musician. I had taught myself how to play the guitar. That's all I was really interested in. And now that I was finished playing football, I don't know, I was in school and I literally lived one of those anxiety dreams in real time. Like I had a final one day and I had not gone to school for almost the entire semester. I certainly had not gone to that particular class. I showed up occasionally to a poetry class, but I really didn't go to school much. And I showed up, and when I got to school, I literally did not know where my class was for the final. And so I asked somebody in the office, she's like, "You don't know where your class is? It's in your classroom. That's where the final is." I said, "Yeah, I don't know where that is." Anyway, after some strange looks, I just walked out of the school. I didn't take the final. I walked down to 34th Street. Fordham was up on, I think it was like 64th Street. And I told my father I was quitting school. He's like, "What are you talking about? You're quitting school. You're in finals. You have like a week left." I said, "No, I'm quitting." He's like, "What do you mean? What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to be a musician." He laughed. He said, "You're going to be a musician?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Good luck with that." He goes, "What are you going to do for money?" I said, "You know what? I'd be happy if I made $50 a night playing in some jazz club." He goes, "Oh, really?" Okay. So needless to say, my father was not happy with my decision, but I quit school that day. And I wound up being in the music business for quite a while, and I did okay. I supported myself. And I remember one particular night, I had a gig with my band at a club called McKell's. And I remember there was a really bad snowstorm that night, like crazy, one of those 2 feet of snow kind of snowstorms. And so we were afraid that nobody was going to come to the show, but it was actually packed. And I get up on stage, we're getting ready to start the set, and my friend Lisa is standing right next to me on stage. And she elbows me and she goes, "Look, front door." And I look and I don't see it, and she's like, "Look." And all I could see is this kind of a silhouette of somebody in a long coat with a fedora. I could see they had a scarf, and he was just standing at the front door, and she goes, "It's your father." And then I just look at him and I go like this, and he waves at me. And then I see him walk out. So we do the show. We had 3 shows that night, 11 p.m., which is when my father was there, 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. And I called my father the next morning. I was like, "Yo, why'd you leave?" And he goes, "It was a crazy snowstorm. I had to get home." I said, "Well, why'd you even come? Why don't you just go home early so you could have avoided all that snow?" He goes, "I just wanted to make sure you had somebody in the audience because of the snowstorm. I was kind of worried. And when I saw that it was packed, I knew I could go home." Pretty supportive. My father. I was going to shoot this video last week, but I waited till this week because this weekend coming up is Father's Day. And my father's not here. He passed away a long time ago. I had the great opportunity of taking care of my father before he died. He got really sick with cancer. And I was with him every day for 3.5 months before he died. And he had a terrible illness. He went through stuff that nobody should ever go through. It was bad. He suffered a lot. But he fought so hard. He went through the physical therapy. He just did so much work. And I realized after a while that he was doing that for me. Because I was there trying to make him work hard. Like I really believed if he did the physical therapy, if he got his nutrition together, if he kept a positive attitude, that he would survive, that he would get through this. But I don't know that he believed that. He lost 100 pounds in 3 months. So I think he was just doing it because he didn't want to disappoint me. the kid who abused him his whole life, who called him out on every flaw that he had, that questioned everything, that really gave him a hard time all the time. He was not an easy kid. I was not an easy kid. I remember the last night that my father was alive. I was in his room like I had been every night during that time, and it was like about 1 o'clock in the morning, which is when the security in the hospital would basically throw me out every night. And as I was leaving, I noticed my father was laying in the fetal position, which is something he had never done that whole time. And he looked like a baby. And I remember thinking to myself, he's going to die tonight, like tonight's the night, this is it. So anyway, I said goodnight and I left, walked towards the elevator, and just when I got to the elevator, I stopped myself and I turned around and went back. And I walked into the room. My father looked at me and he was like, "What's up?" And I was like, "I love you." And he just looked at me and he said, "I know." And you see, that was the first time I had ever told my father that I loved him. And so, my father, he knew. And he died that night. And the great thing about the time that he was sick was that we got to heal everything. Like, we made good with all of our issues, all of our differences, everything. And, I realized over time that this guy who I thought I had absolutely nothing in common with, as time has passed, I realized that I actually had so much in common with him. He was a real New York guy. Like I said, he knew all the restaurants. He took me everywhere. He'd take me out to like Sheepshead Bay or somewhere out in Queens or whatever. We'd go down a basement in the back of a building and there'd be this incredible Italian restaurant or something like that. Or took me to Peter Luger's for my first time. Or, he knew all that stuff. He had a bookie. He took me to all these great sporting events. My grandfather worked at Yankee Stadium as an usher. My father was a huge sports fan. And he used to take me to games, even though I hardly even talked to him. I was so hard on him. But he took me nonetheless, and he tried his best to be a great father. And this guy who I thought was like kind of a horrible person in many, many ways was maybe the best man that I ever knew. A great man who tried his best, who, cared about his family and did everything that he could to provide and to make sure that everybody was okay. And I really believe that the stress that he endured working a job that he hated, because he once told me he feels like a whore working that job, being a salesman in the garment industry. He hated it. He actually became a partner. And, fortunately for him, he really was a very humble man. He had nothing in terms, he didn't have a lot of money until the end of his life where he started to make real money. And I even hated that because I questioned it. But my father just went about his business every day and did what he felt was right and what was best for his family, and then he died a young man. And so I tell this story in honor of my father. Right before Father's Day, this is my stories in 4K, number 5, for Leon Wilk, who was also maybe the best storyteller that I ever knew. And for that, I'm thankful and grateful that I know that he kind of passed that along to me. And it's what my life has been about for the past 20 years. In addition to the fact that now cameras are my life. And my father was a photographer in World War II. So for Leon Wilk, this is for you, Father's Day. One of my stories in 4K. Yeah. And for those of you who are interested in the tech, I'm using my Sony a6400, and in honor of my father, I'm using one of his lenses that I found after he died. I found 2 lenses with his camera, an old Minolta camera, and 2 lenses, a 28mm, which is what this one is, and a 50mm, both manual lenses, really hard to work with. They're kind of quirky, but they have like really unique looks to them, and I really like using them, and so I'm using his lenses for these two stories this week. This is his 28mm. My father's lens. Leon Wilk, rest in peace. And I will see you tomorrow with another story. Peace.